without further ado, I'd like to get the afternoon's proceedings going and invite our first principal speaker for the GEMS Education plenary session. And he is Professor Tan Chuan, President, National University of Singapore.
Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure and honor to be able to share some thoughts with this very distinguished delegation. The topic I would like to address today pertains to the increasing expectations within universities and by the university stakeholders as to the role which universities should play in driving economic and societal development. I just want to touch on a few of the reasons why these expectations are rising, and also that these obviously will require substantial changes in the way that universities think and operate, and I'll just speak briefly about the how and the why of this. So first, why are there increasing expectations by universities and by university stakeholders that universities should play a bigger role in driving societal and economic advancement? I think a lot of this is because many perceive that we are moving now into a very different kind of future. And that different kind of future in higher education encompasses a variety of different elements. We all know about the historically unprecedented massification of higher education, and yet we also hear many reports of how the skills that graduates bring with them from university are not matched with the expectations of the market. Many of us in my generation, I'm not as young as I look, we are tuned to a career for life, but now of course many of the young people have many jobs over a lifetime of career. So I'm not going to touch on these because they're very well known. I'd like, if I may, to spend a few minutes talking about the first two items, and particularly about what I call the three commoditizations. The first commoditization that we are facing today is really the commoditization of information. And all of us are familiar with this, how information is freely available anytime, any place. The commoditization of information, I think, places a special responsibility on universities and teaching institutions to help graduates master the ability to take large amounts of information and transform it into relevant knowledge. This is very different from what universities often are traditionally doing. And in order to do this, because a lot of our information we receive today is pre-processed, the question, the ability to ask the right questions is increasingly important. And if you have two people looking at the same set of data, can one of them see different and better possibilities from the data than the others? So I think these are particular skills that are related to critical thinking analysis that we have to focus on building. So that's the commoditization of information. It's familiar to all of us. But I think we also are seeing what I would call the commoditization of skills. If you look at somebody like myself, Ambassador Gopinath Pillai thinks I'm a good photographer. Actually, I'm a lousy photographer. If you see a photograph with heads cut off or fingers in a way, that's probably taken by me. But if you look at these two photos, the one TCC is taken by me, the other one, Evelyn, is taken by my wife. I would dare say, since my wife is not here, that my photograph is probably better than hers. Right? And what is the reason why I'm able to take better photos than her? It's because I'm using a much fancier camera. So technology has enabled a lousy photographer like myself to become a very good photographer. And across the different types of activity skills, from creative art to robotic surgery, technology is leveling up the skill level of ordinary people. And so what this means really, if you want to stand out, you have to have something extra to be exceptional. So what is this we can give our graduates and students that will allow them to stand out, to be exceptional in an age where skills are becoming increasingly commoditized? And the third commoditization is perhaps coming around the corner, and it's epitomized by AlphaGo beating the world's leading champion in Go in 2016, capping a series of wins by computers and algorithms in chess, in Jeopardy. What does this really mean? We can't really say, except that advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence are creating new types of capabilities that we had thought only humans can master. And this is something that we need to watch out for the future. Of course, these three commoditizations are very important because I think they are also fundamentally changing the nature of work. And many of you may be familiar with the concept of polarization of jobs. If you look at these data from the US Census Bureau, it shows over 30 years that high-skilled jobs and low-skilled jobs have grown quite significantly in the US market. But middle-skilled jobs have been growing much less. And in fact, every time there's a recession, most of the jobs lost are in the middle skill, and they don't recover when the recession ends. So for academics, like many of you in the room, I think you're quite safe for the time being. Administrators, we are a bit more worried because, as you can see, the number of administrators in the workforce is steadily declining. There are many reasons why job polarization is occurring. I won't run through them. Technology clearly is a very big driver. Changes in business models. Also, in the future, changes to manufacturing systems, changes, tech-enhanced or mediated changes in service provision. These are driving many different types of changes in the nature of work. Now, why is this all relevant to people in countries across the world? It underscores the importance of all of us watching to see how we can stay near the front of the curve. We can't afford to fall back too far behind the curve. And in particular, I think every country in the world is asking themselves, how can we be a more significant player, at least in some parts of the global knowledge economy? This applies to all countries around the world, but I think for countries that are still developing, there are particular challenges. In particular, there is the risk of premature deindustrialization, because as most of you know, manufacturing has been a traditional route by which many developing countries have been able to build the economies, create wealth, generate a larger middle class, and close the gap with richer countries. But if you can conceive of an era where a lot of manufacturing is now automated, occur closer to markets, or in developed countries themselves, this could actually lead to a premature deindustrialization of developing countries and hinder a traditional pathway by which they can become much more prosperous. And integral to this risk of deindustrialization is a really critical question of how developing countries can upskill the workforce in order to stay near the front of the curve in a knowledge-based economy. This is expressed in different ways. A report from the Financial Times, the example, shows this plot. I'm not sure whether you can see it, but the y-axis is actually the per capita GDP of different countries. Each dot is a country. And the x-axis represents the percentage of jobs within that economy which is at a risk of being automated or computed out of existence. And you can see that there's a strong negative correlation, meaning that some of the countries with the lowest per capita GDPs have the highest proportion of jobs that are at a theoretical risk of being replaced by automation or computation. So we are moving into a very different future, and universities, because of our focus on education, on knowledge, and on preparing for the future, therefore are well placed and should be key drivers of economic and societal advancement. But this requires major shifts in the ways that universities teach and do their work. I think at one level, systems level, changes are required because within a national or a regional system, we all need to move, I think, towards a much more adaptable workforce, a workforce that is able to shift to match differing and changing requirements by the industry. And I think part of that more adaptable workforce will need to come from having a much more differentiated post-secondary system. In Singapore, we have institutes for technical education, we have diploma granting polytechnics, and we have universities, some of which are closely linked to industry, some which are research intensive. And this diversity of pathways creates many different ways by which students can access the world of work. And this provides greater resilience within the system. Also in Singapore, there's been a much stronger focus on lifelong education. And these changes are mirrored in some of the changes that are occurring in universities like the National University of Singapore, which I'm associated with. This schematic demonstrates how over the past 15 years, we have moved from a predominant focus on academic mastery to have a much stronger element of experiential learning to build personal and interpersonal skills, because paradoxically, in a technologically driven age, personal and interpersonal skills, social skills become much more important. We have also had a very strong focus on global education. For example, 3/4 of undergraduates in NUS would spend some time studying overseas. And in much more recent years, we have also had a very strong focus on real-world relevance of education. There is also now a big push in NUS for continuing education, and this year we have just set up a school of lifelong education. And finally, I think a very critical role of the university is, of course, to do research. But I like to think of it not just in terms of research outputs that each university produces, but the most critical thing that the university does is to create a formidable world-class brain trust. And this brain trust is built up of the experts that we have in many disciplines who can be assembled and brought together to tackle complex but important issues. Now I call this a brain trust because they are able of doing research in a wide range of areas, but they also provide that absorptive capacity, the ability to tap onto knowledge, to researchers from across the world, and bring those to bear on problems that are central to Singapore and to Asia. And also a brain trust because we have a means of sustaining active mobility of talented individuals from academia to industry and government. And this circulation is very important to create value. This schematic just represents the pathways by which, from this brain trust, universities can actually create economic, that is wealth, health improvements, and societal benefits, either by commercialization of intellectual property, creating new products and services or innovations, through startups and spin-offs, and also through industry collaboration. So this brain trust can be brought together in order to motivate economically relevant types of activities, but also can be reconfigured to address many of the important challenges of the country. And I want to end by saying that a lot of my talk seems to focus on technology, but I really want to underscore the really critical importance of social sciences and humanities, because the vast majority of the major societal challenges that the world faces today are related to human and social issues, human behavior, and the impact of technology on the ways society operate. And that in order for us to make real advancements, we have not just to address the technological aspects of advancement, but also the social, human dimensions of this, and contribute to public understanding, debate, and policy formation in these very important areas. And I think this is a very good place to end by looking at this quote from former Indian President, President Kalam, who I think underscores the importance of education but also the central role of the humanities and social sciences in helping us to navigate the complexities that are inherent in our technologically driven world, and which also point to the critical value of developing these expertise and bringing them together with more technical types of expertise in order to create high impact and lasting value and contributions to our countries and societies. So with that, I thank you once again for the opportunity to share some thoughts, and I look forward to the questions and comments that you have in the session to follow. Thank you.